Sagittarius, why you love only 5 types of people and who they are. Sagittarius, have you ever wondered why your heart feels so open to the world, yet so few people truly enter it? Why you can laugh with many, connect with many, inspire many, yet only a handful ever touch the deepest layers of your soul? And why even at this stage of life, after years of giving, caring, supporting, and moving through cycles of family, work, healing, and responsibility, you still feel that most people do not quite understand you? If you have ever felt misunderstood for loving too boldly, too freely, too honestly, breathe gently. It's not because you love wrong. It's because your heart was never designed for the many. It was designed for the rare. At 45, 50, even 54, your life has been a tapestry of holding space for others while slowly learning what love really means to a Sagittarius woman. Freedom, truth, expansion, emotional safety, and soul-deep resonance. You've lived long enough to see that not everyone can meet your fire. Not everyone can hold your honesty. Not everyone can walk beside you without clipping your wings or shrinking your spirit. And maybe that's why, even in moments surrounded by people, you've still felt alone in a very specific spiritual way. The truth is simple but sacred. Your Sagittarius heart operates at a frequency that only 5 archetypes of souls can truly match. And when you don't know who these 5 are, you end up giving too much to the wrong people and too little to the ones who were meant to stay. You end up pouring Jupiter-sized love into hands that cannot hold it. You end up dimming your own fire to comfort people who were never meant to stand so close to your flame. But you also know this. Every time you meet someone aligned with your inner truth, something inside you recognizes them instantly. Your spirit steadies. Your mind quiets. Your heart stops wandering. You don't question yourself. You don't need to explain your intensity, your dreams, your restless longing for meaning. You simply feel, this is my kind of soul. Sagittarius, your entire emotional map is shifting in this season of life. The spiritual weather of 2025, the Jupiter transits, the numerology of year 8, the unraveling of old relational patterns, is revealing to you with crystalline clarity why certain people stayed, why others drifted away, and why your heart has always known what it needed, even when you didn't have the language for it. Today that language arrives. Today you finally understand the sacred design behind your love. Today we walk together into the truth of why you open your soul to only 5 types of people, and who they are in your life. This is not about romance alone. It's about friendships, partnerships, family bonds, soul companions, and the rare humans who make your spirit feel seen, safe, and sovereign. So exhale softly. Place a hand over your chest. Let your breath slow. You are about to discover something that will change the way you love, the way you choose, and the way you protect your radiant Sagittarius heart for the rest of your life. Chapter 1: The Cosmic Reason. Why Sagittarius loves few but loves deeply. Sagittarius, your heart has never been ordinary. Not in your youth, not in the wild years of self-discovery, not in the middle chapters of your life, and certainly not now, when wisdom has begun to blend with intuition in the most exquisite way. You were born under a fire sign ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, truth, and spiritual growth. And because of this, your love has always been different from others, wider, deeper, more spiritual, more boundless, but also more selective. From the outside, people often misunderstand you. They see your friendliness and assume you open your soul easily. They see your laughter and think you trust everyone. They see your openness and believe you fall in love lightly, casually, without thought. But the truth is almost the opposite. You can connect with many, yes, but you truly love very few. The deeper layers of your heart are not a public garden. They are a sacred sanctuary, protected not by walls but by instinct. And that instinct has grown even sharper with age. In your younger years, you may have tried to love more openly. You may have given people the benefit of the doubt, tolerated mismatched energies, stayed too long in situations that shrank you instead of expanding you. Not because you were naive, but because you believed in human potential. You believed everyone could grow. Everyone could rise. Everyone could meet you where your soul naturally stands. But as time passed, you discovered a truth as old as the stars. Not everyone is meant to walk with the Sagittarius. Not everyone can keep up with your fire. Not everyone can understand your need for honesty, space, freedom, or meaning. Not everyone can follow the pace of a spirit that refuses to be caged. There came a point, perhaps quietly, perhaps through heartbreak, When you realized that your love, when given to the wrong people, didn't just dim you. It exhausted you. It fragmented you. It made you feel alone even when you were not. Because loving someone who cannot meet your depth is like speaking a language no one around you understands. You keep repeating yourself, trying simpler versions, watering down your truth, until eventually you feel like a stranger in your own heart. But Sagittarius, that was not failure. That was initiation. A sacred training in emotional discernment. As you entered your 40s and 50s, that powerful midlife portal where clarity becomes non-negotiable, something shifted. You began to see patterns. The relationships where you felt heavy instead of inspired. The connections where your fire burned too brightly for others to handle. The people who mistook your honesty for aggression or your passion for chaos. Slowly, you began to understand that your heart is not built for the masses. It is built for resonance. Your love has always been spiritual, even if you didn't call it that. You do not bond through convenience or routine. You bond through truth. You bond through meaning. You bond through souls that meet you at the frontier where adventure, vulnerability, and emotional freedom intersect. And this is the cosmic reason behind the way you love. Your heart opens only to those who match your frequency. Those who can stand in your fire without fear and walk beside your spirit without trying to tame it. This is why you love few but love deeply. This is why your relationships tend to be transformative, not superficial. This is why losing someone cuts so deeply, because you never let just anyone in. And this is why, when the right people appear, your whole being responds with a knowing that feels ancient and immediate. Sagittarius, you are ruled by Jupiter, the teacher, the philosopher, the guide. And Jupiter requires something sacred in your relationships. Expansion, meaning, integrity, spiritual alignment. These are things your younger self may have sensed but couldn't name. But your mature self, the you of now, knows exactly what your soul can and cannot accept. And this is where the truth becomes liberating. You are not difficult. You are discerning. You are not too much. You are too honest to pretend. You are not cold or detached. You simply refuse to invest in connections that don't nourish your fire. With every year you've lived, your heart has become even more intentional. You no longer chase connections. You no longer justify red flags. You no longer tolerate emotional crumbs. The life you've lived, raising children, supporting family, surviving heartbreaks, carrying responsibilities, has refined your intuition into something sharp, spiritual, and reliable. You know now that loving everyone is not generosity. It is self-betrayal. And this is why understanding the 5 souls you are designed to love is not just empowering. It is essential. The next chapter of your life is calling for more alignment, more truth, more emotional safety. And it begins with recognizing who deserves a place at the table of your heart, and who never did. Sagittarius, your fire is sacred. Your heart is wise. And your love, rare, free, profound, is a gift only a few souls are meant to receive. Chapter 2, The Mirror. The one who reflects your freedom, not your fears. Sagittarius, among all the kinds of souls you have crossed paths with in this lifetime, there is one type that your spirit recognizes instantly. A presence that feels like standing in sunlight after months of winter. This is the mirror. Not the mirror that reflects your appearance or your polite social self, but the rare soul who reflects your essence. The one who sees the fire in you without flinching. The one who recognizes the wanderer, the thinker, the seeker, the truth-teller inside you, and meets it with openness instead of insecurity. The mirror is not someone who imitates you or tries to become you. They are someone whose very being seems to say, "You don't have to shrink in my presence. You don't have to quiet your enthusiasm. You don't have to hide your wildness, your intelligence, your curiosity, or your dreams. I see you. And I am not afraid of you." For a Sagittarius woman in her late 40s or early 50s, someone who has lived enough life to see how often her spirit has been misunderstood, this type of soul feels like the deepest exhale. Because too often, your brightness has threatened others. Your independence has intimidated them. Your clarity has exposed insecurities they didn't know how to face. And the result? You learned at times to dim yourself, to soften your truth, to hide your brilliance so someone else wouldn't feel small standing next to you. That is not love, Sagittarius. That is survival. That is self-compression. That is the quiet betrayal of your own fire. The mirror arrives in your life to reverse that damage, To remind you that your fire was never meant to be muted. It was meant to be witnessed, and not just witnessed but celebrated. This rare person does not merely tolerate your intensity. They expand with it. When you rise, they don't panic. They rise too. When you express joy with full Sagittarius brightness, they don't ask you to lower your voice. They match your joy. When you dream in impossible scales, they don't ask you to be realistic. They open the map with you and say, "Show me where we're going." And this is why your heart recognizes the mirror so effortlessly. There is no resistance, no emotional negotiation, no shrinking of self, no fear that your excitement is too much, your ideas too big, your movement too fast, your honesty too direct. The mirror has their own inner light. They don't depend on your flame to feel alive. They don't compete with your shine. They don't envy your expansions. Their energy is stable, self-generated, and radiant in its own way, which is why your flames can burn side by side without extinguishing each other. Sagittarius, think back through your life. There were times you shared something beautiful, a new idea, a new project, a new vision, and the other person's response made your chest sink. A flat expression, a dismissive laugh, a half-supportive, half-jealous comment, a subtle warning not to get ahead of yourself. How many times have you walked away from conversations like that, feeling like you had to apologize for your own enthusiasm? How many times did you swallow your brilliance to keep someone else comfortable? But the mirror is different. When you speak your truth, they brighten. When you talk about your growth, they celebrate. When you shift into a new chapter, they cheer you on instead of pulling you back. And for a Sagittarius who has spent a lifetime being the motivator, the uplifter, the firebringer for others, it is a rare gift to meet someone who lifts you too. Not because they need something from you, not because they want to stand in your light, but because they genuinely love seeing you shine. For Sagittarius women in midlife, the mirror often arrives during seasons of emotional transition, when you are rediscovering yourself after years of prioritizing others, when you are healing old relational wounds, or when the universe is calling you into a deeper, more authentic phase of your life. The mirror serves as a confirmation that you are allowed to grow, that you are allowed to expand, that you are allowed to be everything you were always meant to be. This soul archetype reflects your greatness without feeding your ego, and without triggering your self-doubt. They remind you of your courage when you forget it. They hold up a spiritual mirror that says, "Look, this is who you are. Don't abandon yourself again." And because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, your growth often happens through relationships that awaken your truth. The mirror doesn't teach you through pain. They teach you through recognition. You may have mistaken this type of person in the past. You may have confused them with someone who merely flattered you. You may have interpreted their honesty as criticism. But as your spirit matured, especially as Saturn and Jupiter shaped your emotional landscape in your 40s, you became able to distinguish between someone who challenges you with love and someone who challenges you from insecurity. The mirror never challenges your worth. They challenge your limitations. They remind you that you're bigger than the box you've put yourself in. They remind you that your purpose is wider than your fears and deeper than your doubts. And this is the essence of why you love the mirror. You feel safe being big with them. Big in your feelings. Big in your intellect. Big in your dreams. Big in your spiritual expansion. With the wrong people, your bigness becomes a burden. With the mirror, your bigness becomes a blessing. As a Sagittarius in midlife, you are becoming more selective. You no longer have patience for connections that constrain you. You no longer tolerate people who dim your fire to soothe their insecurities. And the mirror stands out even more brightly now because they don't require you to choose between love and freedom, between connection and authenticity, between partnership and expansion. Sagittarius, when you meet this type of soul, your spirit recognizes them with an almost cosmic familiarity. Something inside you relaxes. Your shoulders drop. Your breath deepens. You become more yourself. Not a curated version, not a smaller version, but your full, wild, intuitive, vibrant self. And the most beautiful part? The mirror reflects who you really are, not who you had to become to survive. When you find this person, whether as a friend, a partner, or a lifelong companion, your journey becomes smoother, your fire becomes steadier, and your heart becomes braver. You love them not because they complete you, but because they help you remember that you were already whole. Chapter 3: The Loyal. the one who stands with you even when you wander. Sagittarius, if there is one truth your heart has learned the hard way, it is this: loyalty is not loud. It is steady, and steady souls are rare. You have lived long enough to witness the many shapes that human loyalty can pretend to take. The sweet words, the public gestures, the promises spoken too quickly, the convenient kindness that dissolves the moment life becomes complicated. People have told you they cared, that they would stay, that they understood you, that they loved you. And yet, the moment your fire burned too brightly, or your truth cut too sharply, or your life demanded depth instead of performance, they disappeared. And each time a part of you whispered, "Maybe I expect too much." But Sagittarius, you weren't expecting too much. You were expecting consistency. And that expectation is sacred, not unrealistic. Because the type of loyalty your heart recognizes, the kind you truly love, is not decorative. It is not sentimental. It is not performative. It is bone deep, soul deep, steady in the dark loyalty. The kind that does not wobble with opinions, storms, distance, or time. The kind that doesn't require applause or external validation. The kind that doesn't need to be reminded how to care for you. The kind that protects quietly but fiercely. This is the loyal one. The second archetype your Sagittarius heart loves with profound devotion. You know this type instantly because their presence feels like emotional gravity. They don't chase attention. They don't make grand declarations. They don't need to be seen to be solid. Instead, they show up in the spaces where small hearts tend to disappear. The hard days, the messy days, the days when you're overwhelmed and don't have the energy to explain what's wrong. The loyal doesn't need to be invited. They sense. They understand. They simply arrive with steadiness, compassion, and a kind of quiet courage that soothes your fire instead of shrinking from it. This is the person who has your back when you're not in the room. They defend your name when others distort it. They speak truth on your behalf when someone spreads shadows. They carry your side of the story even when you're too tired to defend yourself. They guard your absence instead of using it against you. And to a Sagittarius, someone who values integrity above almost anything, this kind of loyalty feels like a treasure carved from the oldest parts of your soul. Perhaps you remember moments in your past when you discovered that someone you trusted betrayed you out of convenience, or insecurity, or the desire to be accepted by others. And maybe those moments left wounds deeper than you admitted at the time. You continued moving, continued growing, continued laughing and giving and trying, because that is your nature. But deep inside, you began to learn that not everyone deserved access to your heart. Not everyone deserved your openness. Not everyone deserved to walk beside your fire. And yet, there were also moments, brief, powerful, unforgettable, when someone surprised you with their unwavering loyalty. They defended you without hesitation. They stood beside you in uncomfortable situations. They checked on you quietly, not for praise but because they cared in a way that was not conditional. And Sagittarius, your heart remembers those moments with almost sacred clarity. Because loyalty is not something you take lightly. You are a sign ruled by truth, meaning, moral compass. You are honest to a fault, generous beyond reason, and willing to support the people you love with more devotion than they ever expect. And in return you ask only for one thing: sincerity, not the shallow kind that comes from politeness, but the deep-rooted kind that stays steady even when tested. In midlife, loyalty becomes even more essential to you. You no longer tolerate relational ambiguity. You no longer entertain people whose commitment shifts with the wind. You no longer keep close those who disappear when you need grounding. You value depth over drama, clarity over chaos, presence over performance. The loyal one carries an energy you have learned to recognize through time. Calm, dependable, unshaken. They don't feed your insecurities, they soothe them. They don't stoke your fears, they steady them. They don't walk away when your truth is too sharp. They lean in because they know your honesty comes from a place of courage, not malice. This person is the quiet warrior of your life. They may not be poetic, dramatic, or emotionally flamboyant, but their presence is pure reliability. You may go months without talking deeply, but the moment you need them, the connection snaps into place like it never loosened. They don't punish you for needing space. They don't accuse you of neglect. They respect the ebb and flow of your Sagittarius spirit, and they remain. And here is the part that touches the innermost layer of your heart. They protect you even when it costs them something, even when it requires courage, even when it requires standing alone. This is the kind of loyalty that awakens your trust, softens your edges, and makes you choose to stay present. Not because someone asked you to, but because your spirit recognizes them as part of your inner circle. Your true tribe, your sacred few. Sagittarius, you do not love those who flatter you. You do not love those who make empty promises. You do not love those who switch alliances when convenient. You love the one who stays consistent, the one who remembers who you are even when the world forgets. And the beauty is that when the loyal appears in your life, your fire shifts. It becomes warmer, steadier, more peaceful. You begin to speak with more softness because you no longer have to defend yourself alone. You begin to trust again because you finally feel safe. You begin to express vulnerability because you know you won't be punished for it. You begin to rest, truly rest, in the knowing that someone is holding the emotional line beside you. This kind of loyalty is not dramatic. It is not glamorous. It is not loud. It is quiet. It is constant. It is sacred. And for a Sagittarius woman who has given so much of herself to others, it is one of the deepest forms of love. You don't need many loyal ones. You just need one. And when that one appears, your spirit knows long before your mind does. Chapter 4: The Courageous. The one who can handle your fire without fear. Sagittarius, if there is a chapter of your heart that has been consistently misunderstood, it is this. Your fire is not a flaw. Your intensity is not a weakness. Your passion is not too much. Your truth is not aggression. Your emotional depth is not chaos. But throughout your life, especially as a woman who has carried responsibilities and emotional weight for decades, you have been surrounded by people who made you feel exactly that. Too intense, too honest, too passionate, too fast, too direct, too alive. And because of this, you learn to quiet parts of yourself that were never meant to be silenced. But there is one type of soul who breaks that pattern entirely. The courageous, the person who is not afraid of your fire. This is the soul who stands steady when your emotions rise like a storm, who listens when your voice trembles with truth, who doesn't retreat when your passion becomes volcanic, and who doesn't shrink when your convictions become fierce. They don't mistake your sincerity for impatience or your authenticity for confrontation. Instead, they see your emotional intensity for what it truly is. An expression of a heart that feels deeply, cares profoundly, and refuses to live a half-lived life. For Sagittarius women in midlife, this type of soul becomes even more precious because by now, you've learned that most people can handle the version of you that is warm and generous, but very few can handle the version that is fully alive. The courageous does not fear the full spectrum of who you are. They don't flinch when you speak your mind. They don't get defensive when you express hurt. They don't judge you for crying, laughing too loudly, dreaming too boldly, or wanting too much. They don't try to contain you. They don't try to shrink you. They don't try to mold you into something more comfortable or predictable. Instead, they meet your fire with presence. They don't match your intensity for show. They steady themselves within it. They don't inflate themselves to compete. They root themselves deeper. They don't react from insecurity. They respond from emotional strength. This person sees your intensity as something sacred. Not something to tame, but something to honor. Not something to fear, but something to understand. Not something to contain, but something to stand beside. Think about all the times in your life when someone tried to calm you down because your truth made them uncomfortable. Think of the moments when someone called you dramatic, impulsive, or unreasonable when you were simply expressing a feeling that mattered. Think of the times you walked away from a conversation feeling small, ashamed of your emotions, or guilty for having a pulse that beats louder than most. And then think of the rare moments when someone stayed, truly stayed through your intensity, when they didn't get defensive, when they didn't punish you for having passion, when they didn't turn your fire against you, when they didn't leave, when they listened, when they held space, when they breathed with you instead of shutting you down. Those moments were not coincidences. They were reminders. Reminders of what your heart actually needs. A soul brave enough to hold your truth without flinching. Sagittarius, the courageous doesn't try to extinguish your fire because they have fire of their own. They know intensity. They know depth. They know passion. They know what it means to care so deeply that your feelings take shape in your voice, in your gestures, in your eyes, in your presence. They don't interpret that as danger. They interpret it as honesty. And honesty is something a Sagittarius cannot live without. The courageous stands out in your life because they are emotionally awake. They are not threatened by big feelings. They don't shame emotion. They don't compare emotional expression to weakness. They don't confuse vulnerability with instability. They understand that feeling deeply is a sign of a soul that is alive, and they would never ask you to be less alive just to make things easier for them. For a Sagittarius woman who has spent years raising others, supporting others, sacrificing for others, and being the emotional anchor for everyone around her, the courageous is like a soft but powerful revelation. The realization that someone can hold you without collapsing. That someone can witness your truths without becoming defensive. That someone can sit with your fire and not turn away. Their bravery shows up in small moments, not dramatic gestures. In how they stay calm when you're overwhelmed. In how they breathe slowly when your words come fast. In how they remain grounded when you rise in intensity. In how they respect your feelings, even when they don't fully understand them. In how they let you express yourself without punishment or withdrawal. And because of this, something beautiful happens inside you. Something few people ever see. Your fire softens into warmth. Your intensity quiets into clarity. Your defenses melt into trust. Your restlessness relaxes into presence. With the courageous, you don't have to fight to be heard. You don't have to tone yourself down. You don't have to apologize for having a human heart that refuses to live small. Sagittarius, the deeper truth is this. Your intensity is not a threat. It is a love language. It is the way your spirit speaks. It is the fire of Jupiter expressing itself through your soul. And the courageous understands that. They cherish it. They see the beauty in it. They don't want the watered-down version of you. They want the real you, the passionate, intuitive, expansive, emotionally honest, spiritually hungry, fire-hearted woman who has survived enough life to know exactly who she is. In midlife, this type of soul becomes a sanctuary. Not a place where your fire is contained, but where your fire is safe. Safe to rise, safe to settle, safe to speak, safe to feel. You love the courageous not because they rescue you. You have rescued yourself many times. You love them because they choose to stay present with you in moments when others would retreat. And when someone proves they can stay through your fire, they earn a place in your heart that almost no one else can touch. Chapter 5: The Authentic. The one who shows their soul without masks. Sagittarius, among all the energies your heart encounters, there is one that your spirit recognizes faster than thought, faster than intuition, faster even than logic: authenticity. You sense it the way a traveler senses true north, the way a wild horse senses open fields, the way a flame senses oxygen. For a Sagittarius woman, especially one in her midlife years who has lived through half-baked friendships, conditional love, manipulative relationships, and the emotional performances of people who never meant what they said, the presence of authenticity feels like stepping into clean air after living in a crowded room for too long. Authenticity is not loud. It does not perform. It does not decorate itself. Simply is. And this is the third soul archetype you love with a loyalty that surprises even you. The authentic, the one who doesn't wear masks, doesn't pretend, doesn't curate themselves to impress you, and doesn't shift personalities like changing clothes. For a Sagittarius, falseness is not just unappealing. It is suffocating. You feel it instantly, in the tone of someone's voice, in the way their eyes move, in the hollowness behind their compliments, in the artificial sweetness of their small talk. Your intuition, shaped by Jupiter and sharpened by decades of living, can detect insincerity with a precision that unnerves people who are used to deceiving others. You don't need someone to be perfect. You don't need them to be fearless. You don't need them to be confident, polished, or impressive. What your heart craves, deeply, spiritually, irrevocably, is someone who is real. The authentic does not approach you with a rehearsed identity. They come as they are. Flaws visible. Edges unpolished. Heart unguarded in a way that feels disarming. Honesty so clean it almost startles you. This soul archetype is the person who says what they mean and means what they say. They don't pretend to like things they secretly hate. They don't create narratives to manipulate how you perceive them. They don't say yes when they want to say no. Their energy is transparent, even when their life is complicated. And Sagittarius, your spirit melts in the presence of that kind of truth. Because you have spent years, perhaps decades, filtering through people who wanted you to be impressed rather than intimate. People who liked the idea of you more than the real you. People who played emotional games. People who told you what you wanted to hear, not what was real. People who hid their shadows but judged yours. People who approached relationships like performances, evaluating the applause instead of the connection. Over time you grew weary, and beneath that weariness a quiet loneliness formed. Not because you lacked company, but because you lacked realness. That is why the authentic is so important to you. They restore something inside you that you didn't realize was depleted. Trust in the sincerity of human connection. With the authentic, you don't have to translate your soul into digestible pieces. You don't have to hide the parts of yourself that are contradictory, complicated, or unfinished. You don't have to maintain an image. You don't have to behave. You can exhale into the relationship. You can let the guard down that you have held high for years, not because you're weak but because you've been strong for too long. When the authentic speaks, there is no hidden agenda. Their voice carries the softness of truth, rather than the sharpness of manipulation. Their eyes don't scan for advantage or admiration. They carry a presence that says, I am here because I want to be, not because I need something. And for Sagittarius, a sign that values freedom and hates obligation, this is a kind of love that feels liberating rather than confining. Authenticity also brings something else that your heart values deeply: emotional intelligence. The authentic doesn't weaponize your vulnerability. They don't punish your honesty. They don't use your emotional openness as leverage. They understand that connection is sacred, and they treat it with respect. This is why your conversations with them feel nourishing, grounding, spiritually aligned. Even if you're discussing something simple, they speak from truth, not performance. For a Sagittarius woman who has spent years navigating the emotional expectations of family, relationships, children, work, and community, the authentic becomes a refuge. Not a fantasy, not an escape, but a steady place where you can land without pretending. You feel it in your body, the easing of your chest, the softening of your shoulders, the warmth behind your sternum when you realize you are not being analyzed or judged. You are being witnessed. And here is something profound. Authenticity invites authenticity. When someone shows up naked in spirit, you instinctively do the same. Your heart opens. Your truth flows. Your fire becomes gentle. Your intuition relaxes. Your joy becomes unfiltered. You begin to reveal parts of yourself that you've hidden from most people. The fears you've never named. The dreams you thought were too big to share. The quiet aches you carry from years of giving more than you received. And the authentic doesn't look away. They don't fix you. They don't rush you. They hold you with presence, not pressure. This archetype also brings something else your spirit hungers for: stability. Not the rigid kind that traps your freedom, but the grounded kind that allows your freedom to flourish. The authentic does not change their energy based on mood, ego, or social context. You don't have to guess where you stand with them. You don't have to decode mixed signals. You don't have to navigate emotional games. Their consistency becomes a balm to your restless spirit. And in return, something beautiful happens. Your heart begins to trust again. Sagittarius, the truth is that your soul doesn't need fireworks. It needs realness. It needs someone whose energy remains the same in private as it is in public. It needs someone whose honesty is gentle but firm. It needs someone who understands that authenticity is not perfection. It is presence. It is truth. It is humanity. You love the authentic because they are the antidote to every false connection you've endured. They are the reminder that sincerity still exists. They are the echo of your own inner truth. They are the confirmation that your standards are not too high. They are simply aligned with your spirit. And once you experience this kind of connection, Sagittarius, it becomes almost impossible to go back to anything less. Because your fire recognizes truth. Your intuition recognizes sincerity. Your soul recognizes itself in the unmasked presence of another. And in that recognition, your heart finally rests. Chapter 6: The Harmonizer. The one who grounds you without caging you. Sagittarius, after a lifetime of searching for meaning, navigating relationships that either overwhelmed you or undernourished you, loving people who mistook your freedom for indifference and your intensity for instability, you eventually begin to realize something profound. Your soul doesn't need someone who burns like you, nor someone who tries to contain your flame. What your spirit truly longs for is a harmonizer. The one who brings calm to your fire without ever extinguishing it. the one whose presence feels like a soft grounding, a quiet balance, a gentle returning to yourself. The Harmonizer is not someone who restricts you or reins you in. They are not the person who tries to mold you into something more predictable, nor the one who views your adventurous spirit as a threat. No, this is the soul who sees your fire and meets it with water, not to reduce it, but to transform it into something higher. Into steam, into movement, into ascension. This is someone who does not try to change your nature, but helps your nature become even more powerful, even more purposeful, even more aligned. For a Sagittarius woman in her mid-40s or 50s, a woman who has carried emotional landscapes, family responsibilities, personal sacrifices, and the weight of her own unspoken desires, the Harmonizer arrives like a healing presence. Not a dramatic one, not a whirlwind, not a consuming passion that burns hot and fast, but a stable, gentle energy that creates space for your fire to glow steadily instead of flickering in exhaustion. This is the rare soul who understands that your independence is not a threat to love, that your need for space is not abandonment, that your curiosity is not restlessness, that your shifting emotional tides are not inconsistency. They know your essence. They feel your truth. They trust your rhythm, and because of that, you begin to trust it too. With the Harmonizer, you do not feel tamed. You feel supported. You feel mirrored in softness. You feel emotionally safe, not because they demand nothing of you, but because they honor the balance between closeness and freedom. A balance most people misunderstand when it comes to Sagittarius. This soul archetype brings something you deeply crave but rarely admit: emotional grounding. Not control. Not restriction. Grounding. The difference is profound. Control seeks to limit you. Grounding seeks to anchor you. Control closes doors. Grounding opens them wider by giving you a stable foundation to leap from. Control makes you shrink. Grounding helps you rise. The Harmonizer knows that your fire needs direction, not domination. They don't tell you to slow down. They help you breathe so you can decide your pace with clarity. They don't tell you to stop dreaming. They help you align your dreams with your life's reality. They don't tell you your emotions are too intense. They offer a calm space where those emotions feel held instead of judged. This person carries a softness, but it's not fragility. Their calm is not passive. It is strong, stable, and deeply rooted. Their voice may be gentle, but it is truthful. Their energy may be peaceful, but it is not weak. They can withstand your storms not because they're unaffected, but because they know every storm passes, and because they see the beauty in the rain, not just the chaos. You may have misinterpreted this kind of energy earlier in life. Perhaps you confused patience with lack of passion, or mistook kindness for dullness, or thought their calmness meant they couldn't meet you at your emotional depth. But time and heartbreak reveals the truth. The rarest kind of strength is the one that stays steady when you rise and when you fall. And that steadiness is what the Harmonizer brings you. They bring balance without dullness, structure without suffocation, encouragement without pressure. They help you land without clipping your wings. They help you breathe without taking away your wind. This soul archetype also awakens something profound inside you: emotional regulation without emotional suppression. For most of your life, you've had to regulate yourself because others could not handle your truth. You had to soothe yourself because others shut down. You had to calm your passion because others interpreted it as threat. But with the Harmonizer, you don't feel forced into emotional self-management. Comes naturally. Your fire responds to their calm the way flames respond to oxygen. Not shrinking, not exploding, but burning with purpose. The Harmonizer is also one of the only types who can disagree with you without creating distance. They don't need to win. They don't need to dominate. They don't need to be right. They simply bring another perspective with respect, gentleness, and sincerity. And because they never weaponize their opinions, you don't feel the need to defend yourself. Conflict becomes connection. Differences become dialogue. Emotion becomes evolution. This is important for Sagittarius midlife energy. You have outgrown relationships based on emotional volatility. You have no interest in drama. You want depth, not chaos. You want meaning, not intensity for intensity's sake. And the Harmonizer becomes the perfect emotional counterpart because they bring a sense of peace that doesn't dull your spark. It heightens your clarity. You begin to notice things. Your reactions soften, your patience expands, your breath deepens, Your nervous system relaxes, your heart opens in a way it hasn't in years. Not because the Harmonizer overwhelms you, but because their presence disarms the parts of you that are tired of fighting, tired of proving, tired of carrying everything alone. Sagittarius, this is the partner, friend, or soul companion who helps you return to your center. Not the center others want for you, but the center that aligns with your spirit's truth. They don't follow you blindly. They don't lead you forcefully. They walk beside you with a rhythm that complements yours, a grounding that steadies your fire, and a calm that reminds you of who you are beneath all the expansion and movement. And that is why you love them. Not because they ignite you, but because they hold you without holding you back. Not because they validate you, but because they believe in you without trying to shape you. Not because they mirror your fire, but because they offer the kind of water that lifts steam toward the sky, raising everything higher. This is not just compatibility, it is emotional alchemy. The fire of Sagittarius meets the calm of the Harmonizer, and together, something transcendent is created. Chapter 7: Why only these 5? The Jupiterian science behind your heart. Sagittarius, now that you have walked through the 5 soul archetypes, the mirror, the loyal, the courageous, the authentic, and the Harmonizer, something inside you may already feel clearer, more grounded, more affirmed. You may even feel a quiet recognition rising in your chest as you recall the people who have entered and exited your life, and suddenly the patterns begin to make sense. The heartbreaks make sense. The disappointments make sense. The inexplicable connections make sense. The lonely seasons make sense. Because your heart was never meant to love indiscriminately. It was designed cosmically, spiritually, energetically to love in alignment. And now you understand the deepest truth of your Sagittarius nature. You were never meant to love everyone. You were meant to love the right ones, the rare ones, the ones who match your frequency. To understand why only these 5 types resonate with you so deeply, we must go back to the planet that governs your essence, Jupiter. Jupiter is more than expansion and luck. It is the planet of truth, ethics, higher learning, philosophy, spiritual evolution, and emotional sovereignty. Sagittarius does not love from the ego. Sagittarius loves from the soul. And soul-level love cannot happen with just anyone. Your heart is not built for surface-level connections. It is wired for meaning. It seeks purpose. It seeks resonance. It seeks liberation. It seeks spiritual electricity. Not temporary excitement. Not fragile chemistry. Not conditional affection. People who carry fear-based energy, who cling, who compete, who control, who manipulate, who perform, they cannot enter your deeper emotional chambers. Not because you're closed off, but because their frequency simply doesn't match yours. Picture your heart as a sacred gate. Not a barricade. Not a fortress. A gate, wide and open, but only to the souls who vibrate at the frequency that your spirit was born to recognize. This frequency is shaped by Jupiter. It is shaped by your life stories. It is shaped by your wounds and your wisdom. It is shaped by the years you have lived with courage, carrying responsibilities, nurturing others, surviving emotional seasons that would have broken lesser spirits. It is shaped by the woman you are now, not the girl you once were. By midlife, a Sagittarius woman becomes even more selective because she finally understands what costs her energy, what nourishes her, what drains her, what uplifts her, what shackles her, what frees her. You no longer have the luxury of wasting emotional currency on people who cannot hold the weight of your spirit. And the universe agrees. Your next chapters require alignment, not noise. This is why the 5 archetypes matter. They are not personalities. They are energetic doorways. They are frequencies that resonate with your soul's architecture. Let's go deeper. The mirror resonates with your need for expansion. This archetype reflects your highest self, your potential, your truth. They don't shrink you or mold you. They illuminate you. And Sagittarius thrives in the presence of anything that opens, expands, untangles, and liberates. The loyal resonates with your need for safety. Sagittarius is fearless on the outside but deeply sensitive underneath. Betrayal wounds you more than you admit. Loyalty is the ground on which your fire can burn safely. Without it, you live with 1 foot inside the door and 1 foot outside, always ready to run. But with the loyal, your spirit rests. The courageous resonates with your need to be fully seen. Your emotions are big because your soul is big. You don't want calm waters, you want real waters. You don't want mild affection. You want full presence. Only a courageous soul can stay with you when the emotional flames rise, not because you want drama, but because you are built to feel fully. The authentic resonates with your need for truth. Sagittarius cannot breathe in spaces where there are masks, manipulation, or social games. You need people who show up raw, real, human, imperfect, unfiltered. Your heart opens only where your intuition feels honesty. The Harmonizer resonates with your need for balance. Your spirit is wild, free, restless, expansive. You do not need someone who clips your wings. You need someone who steadies the air beneath them. This archetype gives you grounding without control, peace without confinement, love without ownership. But here is the deeper spiritual truth. All 5 archetypes reflect parts of your own soul. They are not just people you are drawn to. They are the energies you are meant to integrate within yourself. When you love someone deeply, it is not because you lack something. It is because they help activate the dormant wisdom already inside you. The mirror helps you remember your greatness. The loyal helps you remember your worth. The courageous helps you remember your power. The authentic helps you remember your truth. The Harmonizer helps you remember your center. These 5 types of souls are your spiritual tutors, your emotional anchors, your energetic counterparts, your karmic partners, not in the romantic sense but in the evolutionary sense. This is why you can only love a few deeply. Your heart is not built for repetition. It is built for revelation. Because every deep bond you form becomes a classroom. Not for suffering but for awakening. Sagittarius, the reason you don't love widely is because your soul loves profoundly. You weren't created to collect people. You were created to connect with purpose. And when you try to love outside these 5 archetypes, relationships feel draining, confusing, imbalanced, or emotionally mismatched. This doesn't mean others are bad or unworthy. It means they are not aligned with your frequency. It means your soul recognizes a mismatch long before your mind does. It means that your intuition, your greatest gift, is always protecting you from connections that would dim your fire or distort your truth. In midlife, this understanding becomes even more powerful. It becomes the compass by which you choose relationships, friendships, commitments, and emotional investments. You no longer tolerate half-heartedness, shallow interest, or disguised intentions. You no longer entertain connections that don't honor your growth. You no longer betray your own energy just to keep the peace. You realize that the people you love deeply are few, and that is exactly how it is meant to be. Sagittarius, your heart is not small. It is vast. It is cosmic. It is Jupiterian. And its capacity for love is infinite, but only for the souls who resonate with its truth. These 5 are your match in frequency, your equal in spirit, your companion in expansion, your reflection in the cosmic mirror. And once you understand this, truly understand it, your relationships transform. You stop giving your light to the wrong places. You stop apologizing for your standards. You stop accepting emotional crumbs. You stop entertaining misaligned dynamics. You begin honoring your spirit with the reverence it deserves. And in doing so, your life expands. Your heart deepens. Your connections purify. Your spirit rises. Because you are finally loving in alignment with your soul, not your wounds. The healing closure. Returning home to your Sagittarius heart. Sagittarius, now that you've walked through these soul archetypes, now that you've met the mirror, the loyal, the courageous, the authentic, and the Harmonizer within your own story, something inside you may feel rearranged. Not in a dramatic way, but in the soft, knowing way a truth finally lands after years of hovering around the edges of your awareness. This journey was never about explaining why you love differently. It was about remembering who you are beneath all the layers of life, responsibility, heartbreak, healing, and growth. You have spent years, decades, even searching for meaning in your relationships, trying to understand why certain people touched you deeply while others left you aching, confused, or emotionally exhausted. You may have questioned your worth, your judgment, your intensity, your instincts. But as you reach this stage of life, your soul begins to whisper something truer, something older, something cleaner. Your heart has never been the problem. Your frequency has simply been rare. And now, with maturity and spiritual clarity rising inside you, you are finally able to honor that rarity instead of apologizing for it. Take a breath here, deep, slow, steady. Place a hand over your chest. Feel your heartbeat. That rhythm is your compass. That fire is your truth. That depth is your power. This entire exploration, this entire revelation has been guiding you toward this moment. The moment you stop searching outward and begin recognizing that everything you seek in others is already encoded within your soul. The 5 archetypes you love are not random patterns. They are reflections of the 5 spiritual forces that shape your Sagittarius heart. They are the energies you are meant to walk with, learn from, love with, and build a life around. And now that you understand this, something inside you settles. Something inside you exhales. Something inside you comes home. Because the truth is, you are not meant for half-hearted love. You are not meant for shallow bonds. You are not meant for emotional performances. You are not meant for people who fear your fire. You are not meant for relationships that shrink you. Your soul, vast, curious, wise, luminous, was designed to love in alignment with meaning, resonance, truth, and spiritual compatibility. And you love only 5 types of people because your heart is not a marketplace. It is a sanctuary, a temple, a sacred fire that burns bright only when it is tended by souls who understand the language of flame. And now you know that. As you move forward in this season of life, a season where you are rediscovering yourself after years of giving, years of carrying family, years of guiding others, you are being called to honor your heart with more devotion than ever before. The universe is asking you to stop scattering your energy, to stop bargaining with your worth, to stop giving chances to those who cannot meet your spirit, to stop diluting your truth just to keep fragile people comfortable. Instead, you are asked to choose the souls who choose you with sincerity, to stand beside the ones who reflect your growth, not your wounds, to invest in the hearts that invest in your expansion, to open to the people who see your depth and celebrate it rather than fear it, to allow your fire to burn in its natural brilliance, uncontained, unapologetic, unedited, because this is the deeper healing. You finally return to yourself. You reclaim the younger version of you who loved fearlessly. You embrace the wiser version of you who now loves selectively. You integrate both into the woman you are becoming. A woman who understands that love is not about quantity, but alignment. Not about who stays longest, but who stays true. Not about who says the right words, but who carries the right energy. And this is where your healing enters its sacred closure. You stop seeking permission to be who you truly are. You stop apologizing for needing freedom. You stop shrinking your voice to avoid conflict. You stop hiding your intensity to make others comfortable. You stop giving love to those who cannot hold it. You stop entertaining connections that feel heavy rather than holy. Because now you see clearly. Your heart opens only to the souls who resonate with your truth. Let this knowledge become your shield, your compass, your serenity. Let it guide your choices, your relationships, your commitments. Let it protect you from pouring yourself into the wrong containers. Let it empower you to walk away from anything that dilutes your spirit. And let it soften you toward yourself, because you have spent so many years being strong for others, so many years carrying more than most people know, so many years navigating emotional landscapes alone. Now you are learning to receive, to be supported, to be softened, to be held by people who deserve access to your fire. Sagittarius, as you close this chapter, breathe in your power. Breathe in your clarity. Breathe in your worthiness. Because this is not an ending. This is a beginning. An initiation into a more peaceful, more aligned, more sovereign version of your life. You now carry the wisdom of knowing exactly who you are, exactly what your heart needs, and exactly which souls your spirit recognizes as home. Let that knowledge shape your next years with gentleness and courage. Because you, more than anyone, deserve relationships that feel like freedom, not friction. Like warmth, not worry. Like growth, not guessing. Like truth, not performance. You are the fire woman of the Zodiac. The seeker of meaning. The keeper of truth. The explorer of the soul. And now with this clarity, you walk into your future with a heart aligned, a spirit awakened, and a deeper knowing of who deserves a place in your inner world. May you choose wisely. May you love bravely. May you honor your fire. And may you never again apologize for the way your soul was designed to love.